So you are able to see the screen, right?
Yes, sir.
So anyway, so last class, so if you remember, right? So we have almost discussed this, the extreme value theory. Okay. So we have seen that, there are something like, three type of distributions are there: type 1, type 2, type 3. So type 1 exponential tails, goes to this type 1, then polynomial tails, then bounded ones comes to type 3. Okay. So we have seen some, some examples. I have shown you how do we calculate all these parameters. So basically, all these distributions, they will have parameters like k, omega 1 or u1, v, or those things. So to estimate these parameters, you should have some type of equations which link, the mean value of the random variable with this parameters. So you have to substitute in these type of equations. So this is for type 3. Okay, then type 1 also, type 2 also we have written, so type 2 also to estimate these parameters, say. So you have these type of expressions. So knowing the mean value, standard deviation of the data, so you can substitute and you can calculate your parameters. Okay, so this is how, we can solve. Then finally, after this, we have gone to, of course, we will be going to reliability. But before that, we discussed this Monte Carlo simulation. Long back, we have discussed this one. So now what we said was, so these Monte Carlo simulations, it's a very simple, straightforward. Okay, not only for to do any problem, say, you do it numerically. Okay, so where you generate random variables, through a computer, the random that chip and whatever. So you generate randomly, and then you compute all the things numerically. So whatever may be the data, say, it may be normal, log normal, or it may be type 1, type 2, whatever may be the or the functional form itself may be, complicated. So whatever it may be, so you can do it numerically, and then, you can just find out, you see, like number of times y greater than 0, like that is the probability of failure, or whatever quantity you want to find out, say. So you can do it numerically itself. Okay. So here the most important thing, as already I told you, how to generate random numbers. Okay. So this is the most important step. As already I told you, right, in all the existing computers everywhere, they have a random number generator. So giving this seed, okay, so you can generate the random number. So most of the computers, they can generate uniform random variables only. So if you want to generate normal, log normal, or type 1, or type 2, or type 3, so how do we generate these type of random numbers on a computer? So what did we say in the last class? So what did we say in the last class? If I want to generate normal random numbers, how to generate normal random number on a computer? Yeah, see, what is that we said? If I want to generate log normal, say, or if I want to generate, extreme value numbers on my computer, so how do we generate these type of random numbers? No. So our computers can generate only uniformly distributed random variables only. Okay, so uniform distribution, this is what the computer can generate, the chips, whatever is provided in the computer between 0 to 1. Okay, so if you want to generate normal, say, so what is that you have to do?
So we need transformation.
You have to find out the transformation. Okay, so if you know the transformation, you can generate whatever random number you want. Okay, so this also we said in the last class, a simple problem, say, where you assume things to be this one. So how did we solve this problem? So this is also random variable, this is also random variable. So this is a bending moment, say. So because both of them are random variables, so m also will be random. So how did we calculate? So what we did was we generated some 5 numbers on the computer. Okay, so you generate a standard or uniform, then you transformation into this one, and you now this is my load. So 5 random values we have generated here actually. Okay, now similarly, say, so w's also I will generate some 5, and then some 5 numbers have been generated. Okay, so now we're using these 5 numbers, say, we found out is the m numerically only. Okay, so from this, we calculated the mean value of the bending moment, the standard deviation of the bending moment itself. So just by using averaging. Okay, and then just as a sample, how do we calculate? Okay, so now basically you can do from analytical also, but analytical things are easy only when things are simple, complex, when the things are linear, and then normal say. So you can do, but so this is an alternative way where you can find out all the things in a numerical fashion. Okay, but the most important thing, what did we say in this problem? Yeah. So this is what we got actual. Okay, so like these are the values you got, 22.34 and standard deviation, but the actual values was 23.1 and 2.4. What did we say in the last class? If you want to be more accurate, so what is that you have to do in the Monte Carlo simulation?
So number of samples should be increased.
So number of sample size, with 5 samples we have got this one. Okay, so with 50 samples say, so you can see this is the mean value and this is our standard deviation. Okay, so now this Monte Carlo simulation say, the most important thing is this how many number of samples is the most important thing. So more large number of samples means obviously there is a better chance of getting more close to the exact values itself. So now in Monte Carlo simulation say, so this is a probability of failure. Okay, so as already we have said, small n by capital N itself. So n is the total number of simulations. Okay, the suppose like the probability of failure. So if I want to compute say, so how many total number of the samples you find out. Okay, and then small n, so the number of times is say my whatever the y less than 0 or y less than 1 or whatever, like if I write r minus q or r by q or whatever, so how many samples are this one, and you can find out this probability. Suppose if you take 50 samples say, okay, and then compute the probability of failure or whatever, or mean value, standard deviation or whatever, I will get some value, some sample the probabilities. Okay, I will get a probability. Now if I take some other samples, say some other random samples, I will get some other probability. Okay, so now as already we said, increasing the more number of samples, you will be more close to the solution actual. Okay, so this is the probability which you have estimated say from Monte Carlo simulation, this itself is uncertain basically, because it depends on the sample size. If you take something, you will get something. Okay, depends on the sample size. So this is the most important thing. So there are some thumb rules or some the approximate formulas are there, like how many what should be the n. Okay, how many the n how many samples I have to take to calculate this probability of failure itself. So if p is a true, so this is a probability, is a true value. Okay, so this is a true probability. If I want to estimate this much amount of probability say, so how many samples are required? So how many simulations I have to do to attempt to get this probability? How many samples are required, say? Okay, to estimate the correct possible probability or the true probability. Okay, so this is a very important question in reliability or in many of the problems, like in the previous problem say. So how many samples are required? Okay, to estimate exact value, 50 or 100 or 1000 or 1 lakh or how much it has to be. Okay, so for probability of failure, there are some the empirical formulas are available. So what they say is this p hat say, which is which is uncertain say. Okay, so this mean value of this sample probability. Okay, so the mean value of the samples which you are calculating from random samples say. So this will be same as a true probability. Okay, now the sigma, this variance of this probability say, that is a sample probability, is I can write this as 1 by n. This is a true probability, and 1 minus p true probability. Okay, so this is my variance, and of course the coefficient of variation say v of p hat, so 1 minus p true probability by using n now n into p true probability. So these are some approximate the formulas actual. Okay, so the sample probability is how it varies with respect to the sample size. So these expressions are required, how many number of samples are required. So you can calculate from this expressions. So these are some simple, the equations which have been derived from the data. Okay, how many samples are required? So to capture, the true probability. Okay, so one can calculate from this expression. See, like for example, say, so now we want to estimate. Okay. So we want to estimate, say, the probability of failures, like this. we want to estimate, you see, the probabilities as low as, say, 10 to the power of -2. Yeah. And you fall and keep coefficient of variation, and I want my coefficient of variation to be less than you see 10%. Yeah. How many samples are required? Followed, so something like this actual. Okay, so now this I want to find out, you see, so I want to estimate probabilities as low as 10 to the power of -2. So this much failure probabilities I'm looking for, and then my coefficient of variation, which is anyway the mu by sigma or whatever the ratio, this I want to be less than 10%. The variation should not be more than this one. How many samples are required actually? So you can use this type of, you see, the equations itself. So n you see, this becomes 1 minus p times true. Okay, so you take square this one vp square say into the true probability. So if you substitute all those numbers, so 10 to the power of -2, okay, divided by, you see, 0.1 whole square multiplied by 10 to the power of -2, say. So this turns out to be 9,900 samples actual. Okay, so if you want to establish, if you want to find out probabilities as low as 10 to the power of -2, say. So this say, and the coefficient of variation also should be less than 10%. So then the number of samples required is 9,900. The samples are required. Now suppose if I want 10 to the power of -1, a probability of this one, how many samples will be required for 10 to the power of -1? So can you guess? So for 10 to the power of -2, you require 9,900 samples with coefficient of variation less than 10%. Okay. Now the same problem, say, if I assume 10 to the power of -1, how many samples will be required? What happens? It will be lower than this or higher than this? See, as the probability of failure decreases, say. So what happens to the sample number? Yeah, what happens to the sample number?
It will decrease, sir.
Yeah, it will decrease actually. So what is, and suppose if I want to estimate 10 to the power of -4, say, very, very low probabilities. Now what happens to the sample number?
It will increase.
How much, can you see here? So this expression, if you see, this 1 minus a p true probability, say, okay, so this 1 minus 10 to the power of -2 or 1 minus 10 to the power of -4, they will be almost close to 1 only. You followed? So now what happens? Which is the one which controls? See, the top numerator is only 1 minus p true. So 1 minus 0.1 or 1 minus 0.01 or 1 minus 10 to the power of -4, more or less close to 1 only. So the one which controls is in the denominator actually. So now you tell me for 10 to the power of -1. So how many sample size will be required approximately? Say for 10 to the power of -2, if it is 9,900, say, okay. So keeping all others constant, this also will be very small. How much it will be? What is the range?
Sir, it will be like within 1,000.
Within 1,000. Okay, so 10 to the power of -1 will become actual. Okay, so one decimal may go, you follow, 990 or something like that approximately, it may come like that. Now suppose if it is a 10 to the power of -4, say, now what happens in the numerator? So the numerator is not going to change. In the denominator you have 10 to the power of -4. So what happens? 10 to the power of -4 goes into the the above this one. So previously it was 10 to the power of -2. Now it is 10 to the power of -4, say. So automatically 100 times more. So 9,900, say. 10 to the power of -4 maybe 9900. Two more you follow, right? Zeros have to be added into this one. So what is the most important thing if you want to estimate very, 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 very low probabilities, say? So your sample size should be
Very high.
very high. You followed? So if you want to estimate very high probability, say, then you have to do very small you see the simulation. That is obvious, right? So if you see this normal distribution, say, okay, so you can just visualize from normal distribution. So if you want to estimate the mean value, say, so how many samples may be required? Around the mean value. So mean, the probability is almost 0.5 you followed, right, in normal distribution. So if you want to estimate the mean values, how many samples may be required? No, very few actually. But if I want to estimate the extreme values, like, my plus or minus 3 sigma or something like that, so the probability of getting these values will be very, very small. So that means, 1 in 1,000 samples, or 1 in 10,000 samples, you will see one such value basically. But whereas the mean value, say, if you generate 100 samples, say almost 50 samples or 40 will be more or less close to the mean value itself. So, so it depends on the probability. So if you want to estimate very, 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 very low probabilities, say, because the chance of getting them is very, very small, so you may have to use your very large, the sample size. Otherwise, you will not be able to observe, these type of values actually. Okay. So these are some simple, the expressions which we, thumb rules you can say, which we use in practice. So if you want to calculate a failure probability or probability of very low, the numbers, extreme values, if you are interested, say, the sample size is also has to be, very, very large actually. That's where, the computational, you see, the difficulty comes into picture actually. Okay. So fine. 1 second. So this is how it goes. Okay. So now here, so now there are, like, you see, there are some methods are there. How do we decrease this? We will see that one. Now, if I want to simulate correlated random variables. So let us say I want to simulate correlated, normal random numbers. So now I want to generate random numbers, which are correlated also. So like, for example, so let, x1, x2, up to, you see, xn, say, these are correlated random variables. Okay. So let us say the mean value, say. So the mean value of this one is, you see, like this. Mean of x1, then mean of, x2, like that. So I have mean of, the xn. So this is a mean value, and I have a covariance matrix also, because they are all correlated. Okay. So covariance of, x1, x1. Okay. So covariance is x1, x2, like this, covariance, I have x1, comma xn actually. Okay. So like this, I have my covariance matrix also. So this is how, I have a, this. So I have a correlated random numbers. Okay. So now previously we know how to generate random numbers on a computer. Okay. Now I want to generate correlated, the random numbers. Like, I want to generate x1 like the previous problem, say. So like, which we solved here. This is P and W. So we assumed both of them to be, uncorrelated. Okay. So independent of each other. Now we are saying that P and W, so they are correlated with each other, and they have some, the correlation, okay, linear or whatever correlation they have. So some covariance is between them. So how do I generate, random variables? So what happens is, whatever numbers I've generated here, so the random numbers, this as well as this, right now they are uncorrelated basically. Okay, they are not depending on each other. But now if I say both of them are, dependent on each other, say. So the if I find out covariance matrix, it should correspond to the whatever the given is the numbers itself. So this is how do we generate these type of the correlated, the random variables, maybe normal or whatever what we have. Okay. So this is also very, very simple basically. Okay. So now if I take y1, y2, okay. So these are all uncorrelated, say. Okay. So and this is very easy to generate. So these are uncorrelated random variables. So this is very easy to generate uncorrelated random variables. You generate all of them independent of each other. Okay. So you can generate, you followed, right? You can do this uncorrelated. If I denote this y itself. So now in, this, so now this x and y, say, okay. So you can link these to some, T type of matrix actually. So you follow, right? So now uncorrelated random variable means what will be its covariance matrix? See, for this y1, y2, this yn, so what will be the covariance matrix for y? So how it looks? If they are uncorrelated, so what will be the covariance matrix?
Unity matrix.
The unity or the covariance matrix, not the correlate. How the matrix it will be?
The diagonally 1 1.
Fantastic. That is a correlation. Otherwise, it will be their sigma square y1. You followed, right? Y2 like that. It will be perfectly diagonal matrix. Actually, the off diagonal terms will be 0 0. But now we want to generate this actual. Okay, so this is very easy to do. So no need to worry. Simply, if you know their mean and standard deviation, you generate some random number on a computer. You can do it here. But now we want to generate this actual. Okay, x1, x2, xn, such that it will have a covariance matrix also. So what do we do? How do we generate the diagonalization? How do we do this one? So in mathematics, if I have any matrices, if I want to diagonalize, what do you do? See, like for example, if I have A, this is n by n, the matrix. So if I want to have, if I want to generate a diagonal matrix, say from A, some diagonal matrix, let us say D. If I want to generate from A, what is that you try to do in mathematics? No. Even in strains, you would have studied, okay, stresses and other things also. What do you do?
So we'll take D transpose, sir.
No, what is that meaning? What is that you try to do? If I have any matrix n by n, I want to generate, make it diagonal. So what is that you have to do? See, how
So we have to multiply preconditioner.
No, what is that condition? How do I diagonalize a matrix? Say, like for example, if I have a stress matrix, okay, sigma 1 1, you have studied, right? Sigma 1 2, sigma 1 3. This is a stress matrix. If I want to diagonalize this, okay, like sigma 1 0 0, sigma 2, sigma 3, all are 0 zeros. How did you do that in mechanics?
Changing
What
the
is
coordinates.
taking the
Changing the coordinates.
changing? What is that? You call that problem as? What are these values?
Eigenvalue.
Eigenvalue problem. Excellent. Okay, so you have to find out eigenvalues and eigenvectors. Okay, same as your whatever you have done in mechanics only. So what we try to do is, you can write D as you see something like T transpose A, multiplied by PR. I can also write this as A. Okay, so which is a T. The diagonal matrix is this one. And of course, you see T transpose actually. What is this a T matrix? Even in dynamics also, you would have seen this one. T contains? No. In a dynamics also, you would have done, right? Multi-degree of freedom system, if you have, say, to convert into a single degree of freedom system also, like, n number of single degree of freedom system. So there also you do these type of multiplications. Okay. So what does this T contains? T contains?
Eigenvectors.
But all of them are orthonormal. Okay. That means, direction cosines kind of thing. So orthonormal, the eigenvectors of matrix A. Okay. So if I have a matrix A, say, so you find out its eigenvalues and eigenvectors. This is the link between these two itself. So the same philosophy we try to do here also. So now Y has diagonal. Okay. X is not diagonal. Okay. So now you can use the same concept. So if I find out the eigenvalues, eigenvectors of my covariance matrix of X, so I can easily link Cx and Cy, both of them, through this same transformation itself. So I can write this as Cy. So this becomes, T transpose, say, multiplied by Cx multiplied by T. Okay. So this is our the transformation. Of course, you can write in reverse also. So Cx becomes, T multiplied by Cy and multiplied by T transpose actual. Okay, so this is how we try to do this one. And of course, the mean values of Y will be T transpose into mu of x actual. So this is a transformations we use if I want to generate this correlated or uncorrelated this uncorrelated the random variables. Like for example, if I have like let us take two correlated random variables. Yeah, so if I take two correlated the random variables x1 and x2 say, okay. Let us say that the mean value of x1 is 10 and the coefficient of variation is 10%. Okay, and mean value of x2. So this is 15 and coefficient of variation is 20%. Okay, and then the correlation coefficient say. Okay, so which is that sigma xy by sigma x into sigma y. So this is a point 5. Okay, so this is so now I have to generate random numbers. Okay, whose two random numbers I have to generate, two random variables data I have to generate such that their means are 10 and 15 and 10%, 20%, and their correlation coefficient is also 0.5. So now this we have to generate. So now this you cannot generate directly on the computer actually. So what we have to do is you have to uncorrelate them. Okay, so that easily which you can find out. Okay, so now in this expression say so sigma x1. So that anyway you can find out. So 0.1 into 10, coefficient of variation is 10%. So this becomes 1 and the sigma x2 say. So this also is a 20%. So 0.2 into 15. So this turns out to be 3. Okay. So your mean value say mu of x1, mu of x2. So this turns out to be 10 and 15. So these are their individual the mean values and covariance matrix say. So this is sigma square you see x1. So rho 1 to sigma x1 sigma x2 and rho 1 to sigma x1 sigma x2 and then sigma square x2. So this is my covariance matrix. So you fill up these numbers. So 1, 1.5, 1.59. So this is my covariance matrix actually. Okay. So now you have to find out eigenvalue, eigenvector of this matrix. So the eigenvectors will be, you can easily calculate, MATLAB will automatically give you, okay, the eigenvectors say. So they will be, say for this problem 0.984 and then minus 0.178 and then 0.178 and then 0.984. So these are the eigenvectors. And of course the new values say and the mean value of y. Okay, so mu of y1 and the mu of y2. So this will be so T transpose. So mean of x1, mean of x2. So you are transforming everything to uncorrelated coordinate system. So multiply this thing 0.984, then minus 0.178, then 0.178, then 0.984. Okay, multiplied by 10 and then 15. So this turns out to be 7.16 and then 16.5. So these are the mean values of y. Now the covariance matrix for y, okay, which is a diagonal matrix you should get. So T transpose, so Cx and then multiplied by T. So T Cx everything So you put everything say I will get this as minus 0.728 0 0 9.27. You follow. So this is the covariance matrix. Okay. So now it is very easy. So now if you want to solve this problem say like x1 x2 are highly correlated. So what we are doing is we are transforming into uncorrelated coordinate system. Or if you want to work with x1 and x2, what to do is I know y value. So I have to generate two random variables y1 and y2. Okay. So whose mean value is 7.16 and this is 16.5 and this is a 0.728 the standard deviation and 9.27. So this is their standard deviation. Okay, so I will generate these random numbers. So with a mean value 7.16 and then 0.728 as its variance and this one as 16.5 and 9.27 as its variance. So I will generate these two random variables just like that. Okay, then to find out x say I will do the inverse transformation. So now knowing this one I can find out all the random numbers whatever I've generated. I will transform through this eigenvalue, eigenvector and others say I can generate my x1 and x2 actually. Okay, so this is how we generate correlated random variables also you can generate on the computer through this eigenvalue, eigenvector problem. Okay, so this is a very important thing if there are things are highly correlated, say you may have to do to generate random numbers on computer, you may have to do this transformations also. Okay. Now, so this way how you can generate. Now let us see. So as already I told you, the Monte Carlo simulations, the most important problem is, as already we have said. So if you want to do, estimate very low probabilities, your sample size has to be very, very large actually. Okay. So the simple problem, maybe you can try to do. Suppose if you are doing a huge frame, let us say, okay. So if I'm doing my steel building or whatever with a huge, many bays or 30-story or whatever, say. So these type of complicated problem if you are solving, okay. Let us say the load is random, metal properties, I1 of the column, beam, so many random variables are there. And if you are doing a nonlinear analysis also. See what happens if you are doing in a nonlinear analysis, some time history analysis, some dynamic analysis, if you are trying to do. So the main problem what you face is if you want to do one simulation itself. So one simulation itself will take, a large amount of time. Okay. So like one simulation runs for, let us say, 1 hour or something like that, a huge computational thing. And then to estimate 10 to the power of -3 or 10 to the power of -4 probabilities, say. So you have to do 1 lakh times this many simulations you have to do, say. So what happens if you are doing any complicated buildings, so many random variables are there, and you have to do nonlinear dynamic analysis also, then what happens is the Monte Carlo simulation becomes computationally very, very expensive. You followed. So it takes a lot of time. And then if you are looking for probabilities of 10 to the power of -5, 10 to the power of -6, say, then the problem becomes much more complicated, and then lot of time is required actually. So now how do we handle this is also a big issue, or how to do these things in the intelligent way such that my computational time becomes less, or instead of running for 1 lakh samples, say, can I get some reasonable values with some very little samples are not. So this the things have been come into picture actually. Okay, the sampling issues. So one such thing which we widely use is this Latin the hypercube sampling. Okay, so there are several methods has come into picture. So this is one widely used and straightforward actual Latin hypercube, the sampling. So where instead of getting to do 1 lakh simulations, you have to do, say. So we do it very intelligent fashion such that with 100 or maybe 1,000, say, itself you will be able to get some accurate or very good reasonable answers itself. So this is a concept actual. Okay. So let us say y you have if a function, say x1, x2. Okay, so this is, let us say y is a function of this one, and this may be nonlinear also. It may be very complicated, and x1, x2, these are all random variables. Okay, so they are all random variables. Now I have to do Monte Carlo simulation to get the probability of failure or whatever. Okay, so let us say I have okay, instead of k I will put n, instead we will put k. Okay, so k is I runs from 1 to k. Okay, so they are the input random variables. So they are all the input, the random variables we have. So now the basic steps in Latin hypercube sampling is like this actually. So what we try to do is, so now if x is a random variable, say, okay, so let us say if it is a uniform random variable. So I know uniform random variables, it means bounded like 0 to 100. Okay, so this is a range of x, say. Suppose if x2 is a normal random variable. So for normal random variable, everything goes from -infinity to infinity. Suppose if it is a log normal, say 0 to infinity, so their sample spaces basically. The sample, the sample space already. So what we try to do is, the first thing is you have to partition basically. So you partition the range, say, okay, the range of each xi into n intervals. So this you have to do. So you have to do the partitioning basically. Okay. There are some guidelines are there. Some guideline which we use the partitioning, say. Should be done such that you see the probabilities. such that you see the probability of a value of xi. So occurring, in each interval, say, is 1 by n. So this is some guideline, but not required. Generally, you follow it. We try to do this one itself. Okay. So now you have to divide this range itself. So like you see, if I am my uniform random variable, if it is from 0 to 100, what it says is this is my range of my random variables. I divide this into some parts, actually, like 4 parts or 5 parts. Say, suppose 0 to 100. If I divide this into 4 parts, basically, okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So now what will be the size of each part? So total is 100. So I will divide into 0, 25, 50, 75, 100. So 25, 25, 25, you followed, right? I will divide this into equal area. Suppose if it is a normal random variable, say, I divide this into parts like minus infinity to, some range, like this portion, say. So this may be some, minus 3 or minus 5 or something. So 5 infinities. I divide this entire thing into 4 pieces, actually. So this is my first piece, second piece, third piece, and then 4 pieces. So that is the range we say. Okay. So now what to do is, so for each xi variable, say, for each xi variable and each of its n intervals. So I have these n intervals are there. Now, so randomly select, okay, representative value. So randomly we select a representative, the value for the interval. Okay. So now you see, so now 4 intervals I have divided. So now I have to take any value in between 0 to 25, 25 to 50, 50 to 75, 75 to 100. I can take 20 to whatever things I can take, but the simple guideline will be you take the mid value. You followed. So 0 to 25, say you take 12.5 or whatever. That's a guide, or you can take any number, whatever you like, actual. Okay. So the number of intervals are large, say. So general guideline is so the number of intervals are large. Okay, so the center point of each interval, say. So this can be used instead of random sampling. Okay, so you select some value in each interval, or you take the center point or whatever. Okay, so now what to do is, so we have selected the n representative values. Okay, so we have n representative values. Yeah, so n representative values for each of k random variables. You followed. So we are having this one. So now the total will be, you see, n to the power of k possible combinations will be there. So this many possible combinations, you see, we will be having actual. Okay. So now so the main, so in the Latin hypercube sampling, what we try to do is, so we have to select n combinations. Okay, such that each representative values. So each representative value appears you see, once and only once in the n combinations. So this is how you have to do this the Latin hypercube. Okay, so now once you have this one set, so now to what we try to do is to obtain the first combination. Yeah. So you randomly select one value, one of the representative values. for each of the k input random variables. Okay. Now once to obtain a second combination, say. So we ignore the first value, whatever has been selected, so we select only, one of the n minus 1 remaining representative values. Okay, so this way then now third combination, say. So obviously, we do whatever we have selected in the first combination, second combination, we remove the remaining things, the n minus 2, you have to select from this region actual, okay, from the n minus 2 samples itself. So now for each combination, so now you will be having, n values of the function. So now, so we will be having, you see, n combinations we will have. So n combinations will be there finally. And for each combination, you see, you calculate your y, the probability or mean value or whatever you followed, right? You calculate everything and then you find out the mean, standard deviation, whatever you want, so probability of failure or whatever from this data set itself. So this is how, the latent hypercube sampling works. Okay. So to just have an idea, we will just do this simple, the example. Okay. So let us say I have y, which is 3 times x1 minus 7 times x2. So this is my y, which is a linear function of x1 and x2 random variables. Okay. Now x1 is uniformly distributed. Yeah. So it is a uniformly distributed random variable from 2 to 4. And okay, so this is a mean and this, so this is uniform distributed between 2 to 4, and the x2 is a normal random variable. With the mean value is 0.6 and standard deviation is 0.1. So these are the two the random variables x1 and x2. So now I have to do, you followed, right, the latent hypercube sampling. So what is the first step in the latent hypercube sampling? What was the first step? What is that you have to do? So now we have to partition. So into some n intervals or whatever. Okay, so that many intervals you have to do. So now you divide, let us say in this problem, I will partition into 4 intervals, let us say. So the number of random variables are 2. So we are planning to have 4 intervals itself. Okay, so x1 and x2. So this is uniform random variable. This is a normal random variable. So the partitions have to be decided first actually. Okay, now we have decided to have 4 partitions, 1, 2, 3, 4 actually. Okay, so now uniform random variables, it is from 2 to 4 basically. So if I want to partition into 4 intervals, say, and it has to be equal or whatever, so I will do like this. So 2 to 2.5, okay, 1 interval, then 2.5 to 3, then you see 3 to 3.5, then you see 3.5 to 4. So this is my 4 intervals. Now I have a normal random variable also. So normal random variable, so because everything goes from minus infinity to plus infinity, say. So I take my first sample as minus infinity, 0.533. This is my one range. Okay. Then 0.533 to 0.6 is one range. So and then you see 0.6 to 0.667 actually. So this is one range I have taken. Then 0.667 say up to infinity. So this is one range. So the whole histogram or the probabilities accumulated, the probability density function has been divided it into 4 parts actually. Okay, so this is the first step. So you partition them into intervals actually. Okay, so these, of course, this is a guideline. It is not essential, but you decide such that the probability will be each interval it will be same 1 by n kind of thing. So in normal random variables say, okay. So like for example, if I want equal probability, so what is that I have to do? The interval size should be. See, how do I select my interval size actually? So these interval sizes are uniformly distributed is perfectly fine. If you divide whatever 10 also, it will be 1 by n, 1 by n, 1 by n only. But if you have normal random variables, say, so how do you partition this one? So in the problem we have taken 0.533, 0.667 or something. So one guideline will be, So you can see from minus infinity to 0.533, whatever is the probability, say, if I compute the area under that region and the area under this region, area under this region, area under this region, it should be more or less same actual. Okay. So you select your intervals, say 0.533 approximately, such that the area of this of your normal distribution in this region, area under this distribution, area under this distribution will be more or less same kind of a thing. So this is a simple guideline actual. Okay. So once you have decided this once, now you have to select the values basically. And now how do you select this one? So now next step is so what is that you have to do for each random variable? What is that you have to calculate?
Representative value.
Representative value. So now what value you will take? So 2 to 2.5, this is a range actual. So which one you will take in this range?
The midpoint.
One guideline is midpoint. It is up to you actual. Okay. So let us say in this problem, I will take the random numbers x1, x2 say. So this I will take the 2 to 2.5 say. So I will take 2.23. Okay. So 2.9. You can take any value in these two. Guideline is if you can take the midpoint or whatever. There are more number of samples also. You can take any value in this way. 3.04 and then 3.81. Okay. So now below range also I will take 0.51, then 0.55, then you see 0.61, then 1.5. So this is my random numbers. So I have in each range, say you take one number corresponding to each range itself. So now how many random numbers are there? So we have four random numbers. We have generated 4 random numbers for x1, and we have also generated 4 random numbers, say, for x2. You followed. So we have generated 4. So now how many combinations are possible now? See, 4 are there. Say how many combinations are possible. Now we have to combine which value of x1, which combination of x1 and x2 you will use to find out y actually. Okay. So theoretically, how many are there? I have 4 values of x1 and 4 values of x2. So which combination of x1 and x2 I have to use to find out y? Now, how many combinations are there theoretically? So theoretical, how many combinations are there?
16.
16 combinations are there. But what you see this Latin hypercube sampling, what it says is no need to go for the 16 combinations basically. So what Latin hypercube sampling says is from these 16 combinations, I should select only 4 only. You followed. So how to do that one? What it says is you select the first combination, say x1 and x2. Okay, the first combination you have to select. So now let us say I select the first combination as 2.23 and then 0.55. So this is my first combination actual. Okay, so 2.23 and then I say 0.55. So this is my first combination, say. Now when we go for the second combination, so what is that the rule says in Latin hypercube sampling? What is that you have to do? So first combination. So randomly select one of the representative values for each k input. Now to obtain the second combination, what is that you have to do? Now you have to remove. For the second combination, which combination you will take? What is the guideline? So what is that you have to know? How do you select the second combination? So for the second combination, whether I have to include once again 2.23.
You have to exclude that.
Excellent. So you have to exclude 2.23 also, and you have to exclude 0.55 also. That is what you see the Latin hypercube sampling says. So now let us say the second combination I take as 2.9 and then 1.5. So this is my second combination. Okay. So this is 2.9 and then 1.5. And then similarly the third combination. So for third combination, you have to remove these 4 values basically. So third combination, let us say I take it to be 3.04 and then 0.61 and the last one say. So obvious last one, whatever remaining you have to take here. So 3.81 and then 0.51. So these are the combinations actual. Okay. So now you find out y1. for all these combinations. So y1 for the first combination, say 2.23, 0.55. So this turns out to be 2.84. Similarly, minus 1.8, and similarly 4.85, and then similarly 7.86. So these are the y values. So 4 y values we have got. Now you find out the mean value of y actually. So mean value you can easily calculate the sample size. So 3.44, and so you will get automatically this is the mean value basically. Now what is the exact mean value for this problem? So exact mean value will be, because it's a linear transformation, say, of course x is UDL, x2 is normal random variables, but still if you want to calculate mean value, so mean value of x is how much, 2 to 4 it is basically. Okay, so mean value is 3, this one will be, so 3 3s are 9, so 9 minus 7 into this the 0.6 kind of thing you have. So the exact value is for this problem, say that's a true value or whatever, so it is the 4.8 actual, the exact value. So now if we want to improve our this one, so what is that you have to do? See, our value from Latin hypercube is 3.44, but the exact value is 4.8 actual. Okay, so now you are seeing a difference. So if you want to improve, I say, what is that you have to do in Latin hypercube sampling? Now, what is that you have to, if you want to improve, what is that you have to do in Latin hypercube?
Increase the number of intervals.
Yeah.
Increase the number of intervals.
But I am unable to hear you. Please tell me clearly.
Intervals. Interval we have to increase.
Interval. So now here how many we have taken? Only 4 intervals basically. Okay, so it is not the combinations you have to increase. See, right now we have taken 4 combinations only. Suppose if you take another kind of combination, so that is not the one which you have to do. So now the thing is you have to increase the number of intervals basically. So you increase this into 10 intervals, say. So the same problem you divide into 10 intervals. Finally, you will have 10 values of x1, 10 values of x2. But the number of combinations will be so much, 10 to the power of hundreds combinations may be there. But among these 100 combinations, what to do is you select only 4 only, you followed. So you have to ignore the combination. So then you will. So if you want to improvise Latin hypercube, say, not this one, you have to increase the number of intervals basically. Okay, so you have to increase this number of intervals. So from 4 to 10, then you will get the exact values. So in Monte Carlo simulation, say, that is an old Monte Carlo simulation, there was no guideline. So simply, if it is a uniform random number, say, you generate in a computer, any random number you want automatically, and then we used to calculate. But in Latin hypercube sampling, what we try to do is we do it in a very systematical way. We divide them into some equal ranges such that probability is is equal to same in all the ranges, and then you take samples nicely, say, from all possible combinations, and then you do the calculations actually. So this so if you're having a 2 random numbers, so if you want to have Monte Carlo simulation, say, so if you generate a 10 10 10, you will get it. But here with the number of intervals, you can get the more accuracy with less number of samples. That is advantage of the Latin hypercube. With less number of samples or less number of the combinations. So this is a very a powerful method and widely used in practice. Okay, so MATLAB has all the commands are there. I think LHS design, you followed LHS norm. You can see in MATLAB. Okay, so it generates this combination. So what this Latin hypercube sampling does is it gives you the combination. So this combinations it gives you. Okay, so this combinations it gives you. So for all these combinations, say, you just just compute the one, and then you will get some nice the answers itself. So this is a very popular method widely used in practice. Okay. Now there is another method also, like Rosen. This is also very people widely used. So Rosenbluth actually. 2k plus 1 point estimation method. So this is also very interesting thing, but the only negative thing with this method is you cannot find out the distribution function or nothing. You can find out only the mean and standard deviation. You cannot get the probability density function or anything, you see, from this method itself. Okay, so what this method is very straightforward. So if I have any function, say, which is so if I have a function y, which is a function of xn, where these are xk, so k number of random variables are there. So what this says is, this is a step actually. So you first determine the mean value. So you first find out determine the mean value of all these random variables, okay, and standard deviation of the each of k random variables. Okay, so this is the first step. Now you find out the y naught value. So you first define the the y naught, that is the mean value of y or whatever. So you find out y naught as function say. So wherever x is there, you substitute mean values. So this is the first step. So you find out the mean by substituting all the mean values. So inside the expression, you find out this y naught actual. Then additionally, what it says is, we have to evaluate this function. You have to find out. Okay, so you have to evaluate, the function y at 2k additional points. Okay, so what we do is for each random variable. So we do like this. So we calculate for each random variable say xi. So you calculate, the function at the two values say xi shifted, which are shifted, plus or minus, the standard deviation. So this you have to calculate, while other variables are assumed constant. Taken as their individual mean values. So it is drawn, is taken like this actually. So yi plus this is equal to function of mu of x1, mu of x2. So like you say, mu of xi say plus sigma of xi, mu of xk. Okay, then yi minus some. So this will be a function of x1, x2, mu of xi say minus sigma of xi, mu of xk. Okay, so this is how we try to do. So others are all there, only this one. So now you find out, you see, so for each random variable say. So you find out yi hat. So which is yi plus, yi minus, sorry, this plus by 2, and then the coefficient of variation say plus minus yi minus divided by yi plus yi minus actual. Okay, so now this you find out for each variable, and finally the mean and coefficient. Okay, so the big mean value of this one will be y naught. So this is a pi, which is a multiplication thing. I is equal to 1 to k yi hat by y naught actual. So this is the mean value of y, and the coefficient of variation say. So this is given by this big expression. So I is equal to 1 to k 1 plus e square. So this big expression minus 1. So this is how you find out the mean value and then the coefficient of variation. So this method is widely used to find out only the mean and standard deviation only. You cannot get the Latin hypercube sampling. Advantage is you had the y values also. So once you have 4 y values, you can find out its a distribution function. You can find out mean. You can do whatever you like. But this method is not, it will not give you the samples. It just gives you the final mean of y and then the coefficient of variation of y. So this is a difference actual, okay, between the methods. Say like for example, so the same y, I have this type of function 3x1 minus 7 times x2, okay. Now x1 is uniformly distributed function between 2 and 4. Same problem. And x2 is a normal distribution with the mean is 0.6 and then standard deviation is 0.1. Okay, the same problem say. So now I have to find out this value. So now this method, say Rosenbluth method, you cannot do any intervals or something. So you have to find out the individual mean value. So x1 mean value is 3. This is a 0.6 itself. Okay, so first thing is mu of x1. This is a 3. And then mean of x2 say is 0.6, and you know their individual standard deviations also. So the next step is you have to find out y naught, which is you have to substitute their individual mean value 7 times mu of x2. So this turns out to be 3 into 3 minus 7 into 0.6. So this is a 4.8 actually. Now the third step, you have to calculate yi plus yi minus. So f of mu x1 plus sigma x1. So this is going to remain same, mu of x2 only. So this 3 plus root of 1 by 3, the standard deviation, minus 7 into 0.6. So this turns out to be 6.53. So this combination. Now yi minus also you have to calculate. So that becomes 3 into 3 minus 1 by 3 minus 7 into 0.6. So this turns out to be 3.07. Now similarly say y2 plus. So this is y1, y2 plus. So this becomes 3 times 3 minus. So here you have to add the standard deviation 0.6 plus 0.1. So this becomes 4.1. Now similarly y2 minus 3 into 3 minus 7 into 0.6 minus 0.1. So this turns out to be 5.5. So these are the numbers actually. So you have calculated y1 plus, y2 plus, y1 minus and y2 minus itself. So you calculate this one. Now you calculate the individual means. Y1 bar is so 6.53 plus 3.07 by 2. So this turns out to be 4.8. And then y2 bar say. So this is 4.1 plus 5.5 by 2. So this turns out to be 4.8 actually. Okay, now you find out coefficient of variation also. The same expression which we wrote previously. So this turns out to be 0.36. And coefficient of variation say for y2 will be minus 0.146. So this expression you have to use. Oh, sorry. Now this expression you can use for all the both the things. Okay, so by using all those things, so you get these numbers here. So the coefficient. Now finally say the last step is you calculate their individual the mean value. So this is how you have to calculate step 5. So this turns out to be y1 this one. So this turns out to 4.8 into 4.8 by 4.8. 4.8 by 4.8. So finally this turns out to be 4.8, the mean value, and the coefficient of variation say. So this one will be 1 plus 0.36 whole square multiplied by 1 plus minus 0.146 whole square minus 1. So this turns out to 0.392. So these are the values actually, the mean value, and then you see the standard deviation. Okay. So finally, so these are the numbers actually. So now the exact value will be how much? So exact value will be how much? These are the values which we have got from this method actually. So what's the exact value? So 3x1 minus 0.72 say. So mean of x is 3 3s are 9 minus 7 into 0.6 actually. The exact value is how much? So what is 9 minus 7 into 0.6? So what is the value? So what's the exact value?
4.8.
4.8. What is the value we have got here?
4.8.
more or less same. If you find out exact coefficient of variation, say, so you can calculate analytically, okay. So the exact value is 0.389 you will get actually, okay. So now our value is 0.392. So this is also very widely used method, but the limitation is you can compute only the movements, that is the mean and standard deviation. You cannot compute the probability distribution or the density function, other things you cannot calculate, only these two. So only the idea here is you evaluate the function say at its mean values as well as at their individual standard m plus sigma, m minus sigma, other random variable you keep it constant, and m plus sigma, m minus sigma of other random variable, second random variable, keeping the other value as at their mean value, and then you evaluate the mean and standard deviation. So this is also widely used. Many problems say we will use it in practice. In the calculations of reliability, the mean value, probability of failures, and other thing also. Okay, so fine. So I will stop here. We will continue in our next class. Okay. So if you have any doubts, you please ask.